My stepson said, "Leave the wedding." That was his biggest mistake. I stood in the hotel lobby with my suitcase, watching everyone walk past me toward the ballroom. My wife's son was getting married that afternoon, and an hour before the ceremony, he told me I wasn't welcome. Not quietly. Not privately. In front of his mother, his bride, and half the wedding party. He said I'd done nothing for him. That I wasn't family. That I should leave. Welcome, this is Voice of Deborah, and if you're joining us for the first time, please hit the subscribe button. I met Sarah in 1998. I was 39. She was 36, divorced 3 years, raising an 8-year-old boy named George. We met at a company training seminar in Columbus. She worked in HR at a manufacturing plant. I was in procurement. We talked during lunch about nothing important. Weather, terrible conference coffee, how long the drive had been. But something about her steadiness made me want to keep talking. We exchanged numbers. I called her 2 weeks later. We started slow. Dinner once a month. Then twice. Then weekends. She never hid George from me. He was part of the deal from the start, and I knew that. I didn't mind. I'd been married briefly in my 20s, no kids, ended amicably. I always thought I'd have children someday. This felt like a different route to the same place. George was polite but distant. When I came over, he'd say hello, then disappear into his room. Sarah said he was still adjusting to the divorce. His father had remarried quickly and moved to Arizona. Sent a check every month, called on birthdays, visited twice a year. George didn't talk about him much. Sarah and I married in the spring of 2000. Small ceremony, courthouse, then dinner with close friends. George was the ring bearer. He stood beside us and smiled for the photos. That night, I moved into their house, a 3-bedroom ranch Sarah had kept after the divorce. I paid off the mortgage within 2 years. Refinanced it first under both our names, then cleared it completely. I wanted her to feel secure. I wanted George to grow up in a house that was stable. I tried with him. I really did. I drove him to soccer practice twice a week. Helped with his math homework at the kitchen table. Took him fishing on Saturdays when he'd let me. He never called me Dad. I never asked him to. I told him he could call me Jim, and that was fine. I thought respect would come with time. But it didn't. He wasn't cruel. He just wasn't present. When I spoke, he'd nod and leave the room. When I asked about school, he'd give one-word answers. When I tried to set boundaries, curfews, chores, expectations, Sarah would soften them. She said he was fragile. That the divorce had been hard. That pushing him would make things worse. I didn't push. Years went by. George graduated high school in 2008. I paid for his college. Sarah and I had talked about it when we got married. She made decent money, but not enough to cover tuition, room, board. I'd been saving. I had no debt, no expensive habits. I told her it wasn't a problem. George was going to Ohio State. I wrote the checks every semester. Tuition, books, housing. $53,000 over 4 years. He didn't thank me. Not once. Sarah said he was focused on his studies. That he appreciated it, even if he didn't say so. I told myself that was enough. He graduated with a degree in business. Got a job in Cleveland with a logistics company. Moved into an apartment with 2 roommates. Called his mother every Sunday. Never called me. When I answered the phone, he'd ask to speak to her. If she wasn't home, he'd say he'd call back. I started to realize I was furniture in his life. Present, functional, unacknowledged. Sarah and I were happy though. We traveled. Took trips to the Smokies, Niagara Falls, Charleston. We hosted Thanksgiving every year. I cooked the turkey. She made the sides. George came, ate, left early. His father came to visit once during those years, stayed 3 days, took George to a Cavs game. George talked about that trip for months. In 2015, Sarah's mother passed away. Left her a small inheritance. $42,000. Sarah wanted to add it to our savings. but I suggested she put it aside for George. Maybe for a wedding one day, or a house. She thought that was kind. She set up a separate account. That same year, I was diagnosed with diabetes. Type 2. Manageable, but it meant medication, monitoring, dietary changes. I handled it quietly. Adjusted my routine. Sarah worried, but I told her I was fine. I didn't want to be a burden. George got engaged in 2017. Her name was Rachel. She worked in marketing. They'd been dating 2 years. Sarah was overjoyed. She called me at work, nearly crying with happiness. We met Rachel a month later over dinner. She was polite, well-spoken, ambitious. She barely looked at me during the meal. When I asked her about her work, she answered in short sentences, then turned to George. The wedding was set for June 2018. A big affair. 200 guests. Country club venue. Sarah threw herself into planning. She and Rachel spent hours on the phone, visiting florists, caterers, photographers. I stayed out of it. I figured it wasn't my place. But I helped pay for it. The venue cost $12,000. Catering was $18,000. Photography, music, flowers. Another $15,000. Rachel's parents contributed $20,000. Sarah used the inheritance from her mother, all $42,000. That left us covering about $25,000. I paid it. Didn't hesitate. I wanted George to have a good start. I wanted Sarah to be proud. A week before the wedding, Sarah asked me to pick up the final payment for the DJ. I drove to his office, handed him a check for $3,500. He thanked me, said the wedding would be beautiful. I told him I hoped so. The day before the wedding, we drove to the hotel. The ceremony and reception were both at the same country club, an hour outside Cleveland. We checked in Friday afternoon. The rehearsal dinner was that evening. I wore a suit. Sat beside Sarah at a long table. George gave a speech thanking everyone. He thanked Rachel's parents for their support. He thanked his mother for everything she'd sacrificed. He thanked his father, who sat 3 tables away with his second wife, for always believing in him. He didn't mention me. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Told myself it didn't matter. The next morning, the wedding was set for 4 o'clock. I put on my tuxedo, rented, same as the groomsmen. Sarah looked beautiful. She wore a navy dress, had her hair done, couldn't stop smiling. We went downstairs to the lobby around 2. The photographer was setting up. Guests were starting to arrive. Rachel's mother found us near the entrance. She looked tense. She asked Sarah if she could speak with her privately. They stepped into a side hallway. I stood there adjusting my tie, watching people mill around. 5 minutes later, Sarah came back. Her face was pale. She said George wanted to talk to us. We walked down the hallway to a small conference room. George was inside, still in his dress shirt and slacks, no jacket yet. Rachel was beside him, arms crossed. 2 of his groomsmen stood near the door. George didn't sit. He looked at me. He said, "I need you to leave." I didn't understand at first. I asked him what he meant. He said, "I don't want you at my wedding. I want you to leave." Sarah said, "George, what are you talking about?" He said, "This is my day. Rachel's day. I want people here who actually matter. He's not my father. He's never been my father. He doesn't belong here." I stood there. I didn't move. I didn't speak. Sarah started to say something, but George cut her off. He said, "I appreciate that he helped out financially. I do. But this is my wedding. I want my real dad here. I want the people who actually care about me here. He doesn't fit. He never has." Rachel didn't say anything. She looked at the floor. One of the groomsmen shifted uncomfortably. Sarah said, "George, Jim has done everything for you. He paid for your school. He's helped with this wedding. He's been in your life for 18 years. George said, "And I never asked him to. Mom, please. Don't make this harder. I just want today to be about family." I looked at Sarah. Her eyes were full of tears. I said, "It's fine." She said, "Jim." I said, "It's fine. I'll go." George nodded. He said, "Thank you." I walked out of the room. Sarah followed me. She was crying, saying she'd talk to him, that this was insane, that she'd fix it. I told her not to. I told her this was his wedding, and if he didn't want me there, I wouldn't stay. I told her to go back, to be with her son. She said, "I'm not staying if you're not." I said, "Yes, you are. You're his mother. You've been planning this for a year. Don't let him take that from you." She was crying harder. She said she didn't understand. That George had never been this cruel. I said, "He's getting married. He's stressed. It's fine." She said, "It's not fine." I said, "Sarah, go. Please." She stood there for a long time. Then she hugged me, kissed my cheek, went back toward the conference room. I took my suitcase from the hotel room and left, drove home, changed out of the tuxedo, sat on the couch in the quiet house. The wedding started at 4. I imagined them walking down the aisle, saying vows, first dance, toasts, Sarah smiling through tears, George laughing with his friends, his father shaking hands, proud. I sat there until midnight. Sarah came home at 1 in the morning. She was still in her navy dress. She sat beside me, didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "I'm so sorry." I said, "It's not your fault." She said, "I should have left. I should have walked out with you." I said, "You did the right thing." She cried. I held her. We didn't talk about it much after that. George and Rachel went on their honeymoon. 2 weeks in Italy. When they got back, Sarah called him. He apologized to her. Said he'd been stressed. That he hadn't meant to hurt anyone. He didn't apologize to me. Sarah said she told him he needed to. He said he would. He never did. Months passed. Then a year. George and Rachel bought a house in 2019. A small starter home in Lakewood. They asked Sarah and me for help with the down payment. Sarah looked at me. I didn't say anything. She told George we couldn't. He was upset. Said he didn't understand. Why? Sarah didn't explain. In 2021, Sarah was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Stage 3. It was aggressive. She started chemotherapy immediately. I took leave from work. Drove her to every appointment. Sat with her during infusions. Held her hair when she got sick. Cleaned the house. Cooked meals she could keep down. Slept in a chair beside the bed when she couldn't sleep. George visited twice during the first 3 months. Rachel came once. Sarah didn't complain, but I saw it in her eyes. The treatments lasted 18 months. Brutal, exhausting, relentless. But they worked. By the end of 2022, her scans were clear. The doctors called it remission. She cried when they told her. So did I. We celebrated quietly. Dinner at home. Just the 2 of us. George called that night. Said he was glad she was okay. Said he'd been praying. Sarah thanked him. Asked if he wanted to come visit. He said he would soon. He didn't. In early 2023, Sarah and I updated our wills. We'd talked about it during her treatment. Mortality makes you practical. We sat with a lawyer. Went through everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, the insurance policies. Sarah wanted to make sure George was taken care of. I didn't object. But I also didn't want to pretend. I told the lawyer to make it clear. The house would go to Sarah if I died first. If she died first, it would go to me. After both of us were gone, George would inherit. But there was a condition. A letter. Written by me. To be read by George before he could claim anything. The lawyer drafted it. I signed it. Sarah read it. She cried. But she didn't ask me to change it. Sarah passed away in November 2024. Not from cancer. A stroke. Sudden, massive, untreatable. She was at the grocery store. Collapsed in the produce aisle. Gone before the ambulance arrived. I got the call at work. Drove to the hospital. They let me see her. I held her hand. It was still warm. George arrived an hour later. He cried. I didn't. I couldn't. I was hollow. The funeral was small. Sarah had wanted that. I arranged everything. Picked the casket, the flowers, the music. George helped with the guest list. We barely spoke. After the funeral, people came to the house. Brought food, shared memories, hugged me. George stood in the corner with Rachel. They left early. A week later, the lawyer called. Said it was time to read the will. We met at his office. George sat across from me. Rachel beside him. The lawyer read through the details. The house. The savings account. $47,000. The life insurance policy. $150,000. George would inherit everything. But first, the letter. The lawyer handed it to George. Told him he needed to read it aloud. It was a condition of the will. George looked at me. I looked back. He opened the envelope. Started reading. George, I'm writing this in case you're reading it after I'm gone. If you are, it means your mother is gone too. I'm sorry for that. She loved you more than anything in this world. I need you to know some things. I met your mother when you were 8 years old. I married her when you were 10. I moved into your house. Paid off the mortgage. Made sure you had a stable home. I drove you to practice. Helped with homework. Tried to be present. You kept me at a distance. I respected that. I thought time would change it. It didn't. I paid for your college. $53,000. You never thanked me. Your mother said you appreciated it. I believed her. I helped pay for your wedding. $25,000. You told me to leave an hour before the ceremony. Said I didn't belong. Said I wasn't family. Your mother cried. I left. You never apologized. When your mother got cancer, I took care of her. Every day. Every appointment. Every hard night. You visited twice in 18 months. She noticed. She didn't say it, but I saw it. I'm not writing this to punish you. I'm writing this because you need to understand what you inherited. You didn't inherit my money. You inherited your mother's love. Everything I built for her. Everything I saved so she could feel secure. When she got sick, I spent it on her care. When she died, what was left was hers to give. She wanted you to have it. Even after everything. She loved you that much. I hope you remember that. I hope you remember her. I hope you realize what you had. You told me I wasn't family. You were right. Family shows up. Family sacrifices. Family says thank you. I did all of that. You did none of it. You're inheriting a house I paid for. Savings I built. A life I made stable. And you'll do it without ever having to thank me. I hope it was worth it. Jim. George stopped reading. The room was silent. Rachel's face was pale. The lawyer cleared his throat. Said that was all. The assets would be transferred as outlined. George folded the letter. Put it back in the envelope. Looked at me. He said, I didn't know. I said, yes, you did. He said, I was young. I didn't understand. I said, you were 35 at your wedding. He didn't respond. I stood up. Told the lawyer to send me the paperwork when it was finalized. Walked out. George called me 3 days later. I didn't answer. He called again. And again. Left voicemails. Said he wanted to talk. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't realize. Said he wanted to make things right. I didn't call back. A month later, he showed up at the house. Knocked on the door. I opened it. He stood there with red eyes, wrinkled shirt, hand shaking. He said he couldn't sleep. That Rachel was furious with him. That she'd read the letter and called him selfish. That his friends had heard about it and stopped talking to him. That his father had called him a fool. He said he wanted to give it all back. The house. The money. Everything. I said, I don't want it. He said, then what do you want? I said, I wanted you to show up. I wanted you to say thank you. I wanted you to see your mother before she died. I wanted you to be the son she thought you were. He started crying. I said, you can't give me that now. It's too late. I closed the door. I sold my car and bought something smaller. Moved into a one-bedroom apartment near downtown. Started volunteering at a community center. Teaching financial literacy to young men who didn't have fathers. I told them how to budget, how to save, how to show up for the people who show up for them. Some of them listen. Some of them don't. I keep teaching anyway. I think about Sarah every day. I think about George sometimes. Mostly I think about the difference between being present and being remembered. I was present. I showed up. I sacrificed. I gave. And the only time I was remembered was when I was gone. I don't regret what I did. I regret that it wasn't enough. But that's not on me. That's on him. If you've stayed with me until now, thank you. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been the one who showed up, who gave everything, who stood in the background while someone else took the credit, then let me ask you something. Don't wait for a letter. Don't wait for a will. Tell the people who sacrificed for you that you see them, that you're grateful, that they mattered. Because one day it'll be too late. This is Voice of Deborah. If this story touched you, please share it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And remember, family isn't just blood. It's who shows up.